Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalam ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. In the name of God, the most compassionate, the most merciful, all praise and thanks belong to God, the Lord of the worlds. May peace, blessings, and prayers be upon Prophet Muhammad, his family, his companions, and all of God's prophets and messengers. Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters. This is Edward Ahmed Mitchell, the Deputy Director of the Council on American Islamic Relations, welcoming you to today's episode of CAIR on Air. Thank you so much for joining us. Eid Mubarak to everyone celebrating. I hope you had a wonderful, blessed Eid with your families. I hope you had great food, great time, and great worship. Inshallah, may Allah allow us to complete many more Eids and many more Ramadans and Eid al-Adhas and go on Hajj, inshallah, very soon and very safely. So today, inshallah, we have a program that I think is really maybe one of the more important ones we've done in recent times because of something that happened yesterday on Capitol Hill. Yesterday, alhamdulillah, CAIR had the honor of joining several members of Congress to call for the Biden administration to appoint a special envoy to combat international global Islamophobia. CAIR has been calling for this for years, maybe even decades, for the government to appoint someone whose sole responsibility is to monitor, expose, and counter anti-Muslim bigotry. And now, sadly, because of how widespread anti-Muslim bigotry has become, from Austria to China to France to Myanmar to Kashmir to India, obviously Palestine, and of course Canada, and obviously here in America, all around the world, it's spreading like a disease, like a wildfire, and it is taking lives, anti-Muslim bigotry. And so what CAIR has done is said that, look, the United States government has a moral responsibility to play a role in fighting Islamophobia. And in fact, you could argue the United States government has played a role in perpetuating Islamophobia, and therefore it's on us to play a role in stopping the spread of global Islamophobia. And so we've called for the government to appoint this envoy, and several members of Congress decided to join that call, and they're going to try to get the Biden administration to do that. And they're also going to be introducing legislation to make this a set part of the way our government works, inshallah. So before we bring on our special guest to discuss this, I want to play a brief video about yesterday's press conference on Capitol Hill. Then we'll bring on our special guest and dive into this in more detail, inshallah. Let's go ahead and play that video, and then we'll dive in. Bismillah. And I think we'll have to start the video over and make sure the audio is playing.
We are here because we are seeing a stark rise in anti-Muslim hate in this
Still
country.
No audio quite yet. Producer, you might want to try unmuting yourself. Okay, technical difficulties. Our producer is going to work on that. While he does that, let's bring our special guest, and we'll start discussing this, and then we'll play the video once it's up and ready, inshallah. Let's bring on Huzaifa Shahbaz, the Research and Advocacy Coordinator of CAIR National. Assalamu alaikum, Brother Huzaifa. Welcome. And how are you?
Alhamdulillah. Always doing well, alhamdulillah. How are you?
Alhamdulillah. Huzaifa, I can't hear you.
Oh.
Producer, can you hear Huzaifa? Okay, strange. I can't hear you, Huzaifa, but that's okay as long as the audience can. So, Huzaifa, tell us about the report. CAIR produced a report that played a big role in leading to members of Congress deciding to call for this special envoy. Tell us about the report, and our producer can maybe put it on screen while you're talking. Tell us about the report and what it shows.
Absolutely. So what I'll do now, I'm going to provide a brief overview of what the purpose of this report was, and then maybe go through a few key research findings. So the purpose, this report is what we call a snapshot summary of the anti-Muslim bias incidents that we've documented between January and July. And so the purpose is to just give a glimpse to the public about the everyday lives of American Muslims who live in the United States, who have to deal with the lethal threat of Islamophobia. And so our national office had observed over 500 incidents of anti-Muslim bias incidents just between January and July. And surprisingly, well, not very surprisingly, the mainstream press was not covering these incidents. And so we thought we needed to do something about this and let the public know about the kinds of things, the kinds of ways Islamophobia comes about in the public sphere. And we also saw a lack of recognition of Islamophobia from the federal level. And so just to go through some findings, in the month of May and June, we witnessed increased anti-Muslim hate crimes, including 4 anti-mosque attacks in May alone. And in June, involving cases of vandalism and even an attempted stabbing nearby in Virginia, and several physical assault cases specifically targeting Muslim women who wear hijab. The second trend that we've noticed is bullying against Muslim students occurred at rapid rates, involving hate speech and physical attacks. And then we also had public officials who were frequently using anti-Muslim speech through social media avenues to marginalize American Muslims. Specifically, one example is the targeting of Representative Ilhan Omar by AIPAC, and even Marjorie Taylor Greene, Representative Greg Murphy. And then also we wanted to shed light on some our neighbor in Canada, who were also experiencing an increase in anti-Muslim hate crimes after a terrorist attack that killed a Muslim family, wiping out 3 generations of a whole family in June. And so we thought it was important to shed light on the severity of Islamophobia. And so we highlighted specifically 38 incidents that we believe do justice to that. And we compiled it into a report and provided a few recommendations as well to the Biden administration and the public to combat Islamophobia.
All right, thank you, Huzaifa. So now talk to me about the call for a special envoy. That's just one of the recommendations from the report. But tell us, what the demand is and what this envoy could do to tackle global Islamophobia. And then while you're answering that, also tell us, why would this help? Because it would not only help protect religious freedom overseas, but also help counter Islamophobia here at home, because it's interconnected, right? When we look at what these anti-Muslim mass shooters write, when we look at what anti-Muslim governments say, they are using the same talking points we've been hearing in America for years. The Chinese government's security language about Muslims, very similar to security language that you've heard about Muslims in the United States. These hate crimes that are committed, the language in their manifestos, very similar as well. So tell us about the envoy demand, and then we'll play the video from CBS recapping yesterday's press conference.
Yeah, absolutely. So CAIR has been, like you said, Brother Edward, in the beginning of this program, we've been calling for this special envoy for decades now. And up until now, I think the public has started to recognize that Islamophobia is, a growing global epidemic. I like to say that Islamophobia is an international emergency. It's an international emergency because we're seeing increasing anti-Muslim policies, increasing anti-Muslim hate crimes, and a cultural genocide in China that is happening, right? And so global Islamophobia, like you said, is an interconnected problem. It's connected with these white supremacist networks that really feed off each other and their language. If you look at the manifestos, they use the same type of, Muslim invaders, this fear of small numbers, of being a white minority. So what they call the Great Replacement. And so the call for a special envoy to combat Islamophobia is crucial, because we are seeing, for example, in France, attacks on hijab, laws that specifically target Muslim women. So we have anti-hijab laws. In China, we're seeing up more than 1 million Uyghur Muslims who are being held in concentration camps. And this has also been characterized as a genocide by the United States government. In Austria, we're seeing mosques and Islamic centers simply being targeted because they, follow Islam, right? And so it's becoming increasingly clear that we need to study Islamophobia at the federal level because of its alarming necessity. And unless we don't, the United States has a platform to be a voice to combat Islamophobia, and we believe creating such an office will do justice to the high levels, to combat the high levels of Islamophobia that we are, witnessing across the world.
Absolutely. Now let's go ahead and thank you, David. Let's go ahead and play that video from the press conference the other day and get a little flavor of what the members of Congress are saying about this issue.
Sure.
And this you're going to hear from Representative Ilhan Omar, who's leading this effort.
We are here because we are seeing a stark rise in anti-Muslim hate in this country. It is for this reason that we are calling on the State Department to create a special envoy to combat Islamophobia and to include state-sponsored Islamophobic violence and impunity for Islamophobic violence in next year's annual human rights reports. I will also be introducing legislation that gives this envoy the force of law. It is time for us as policymakers to treat these problems as interconnected and genuinely global.
Absolutely.
So that was Representative Ilhan Omar, and also present there were Representative Schakowsky and Andre Carson and others who were supporting the bill. I believe I think 20 members of Congress have signed on to this legislation so far, which is, it's important. And the nice thing is, again, President Biden could simply do this by decree. He can appoint an envoy, just like he's appointed a climate envoy. That's not a legislative position. That's a presidentially created and appointed position. And he's actually made it a cabinet level position. And so similarly, he can declare an envoy to address this issue. It happens all the time. You had special envoys to deal with Afghanistan and Bosnia and other things. And the envoy to combat anti-Semitism is a legislative creation. And so that's also why it makes sense to have the Islamophobia envoy be a legislative creation. That way it'll last beyond this president. Whoever's president, there will be that position, God willing. Obviously, it could get a little interesting who's in the position, depending on who's president. But nonetheless, it's good to have the position there, God willing.
Yeah.
So Huzaifa, next question. So we've got the bill coming. We've got the letter to Secretary Blinken. So progress is being made. Now, we as Muslims, though, we're not sitting around waiting for governments to save us, right? We're not waiting for the American government to save us. We're not waiting for anyone else to do so. We, at the same time, we are calling on our government to take action. We are also, as people, as activists, as individuals, trying to make sure we're doing what we can to protect ourselves and our community. So, Huzaifa, remind us of some of the efforts that we're taking to try to combat global Islamophobia at the local level. Hilton is one example. Obviously, we're going to have an announcement about that soon. We don't want to go into detail there, but just remind people of some of the efforts that we're taking, whether it's in France or China, to try to address global Islamophobia as individual activists.
Absolutely. CAIR has, I think, multiple times, given out statements, calling on the State Department to, list certain countries as countries of concern who are, having anti-Muslim policies and, producing those kinds of policies. We are, some of the recommendations we also gave to the Biden administration right now, what we're pushing for is to, one, have a some sort of recognition at the federal level from the Biden administration that Islamophobia is a real problem and it's not an American value. And so that's one of the things that we would like the President Biden to do, and also condemn anti-Muslim bias incidents and hate crimes. We also want federal law enforcement. We're pushing for federal law enforcement to aggressively prosecute unlawful acts of anti-Muslim hate crimes when law enforcement fails to act. And in addition to this whole discussion, we're also pushing for this special envoy to combat Islamophobia. So whether that's in Austria, China, Burma, France, we believe that the United States can be the leading voice, and it sends a message that Islam, if it comes from the United States, it sends a very powerful message that Islamophobia will not be tolerated, just as we do with anti-Semitism, right? So I think it's really important to, continue to build this kind of power from the grassroots level, continue to push our the Biden administration and our congressional members to take the threat of Islamophobia seriously. I didn't mention this earlier, but we've had over 6,000 complaints just at the CAIR office in 2020, and between 2014 and 2019, we'd had 10,000 anti-Muslim bias incidents. And so, again, the evidence is overwhelmingly clear that this is a lethal threat. It's an issue we need to take seriously, and we have forces there that are trying to discredit Islamophobia as a form of racism, and we need to do everything we can to ensure that this form of racism doesn't get swept under the bus, or will have severe consequences.
Absolutely. Let's play one more video from Brother Nihad Awad, our executive director, who was at the press conference yesterday, and hear his thoughts on this problem of global Islamophobia and how this is the Envoy position is just one part of the effort to address it.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to thank Representative Omar for her leadership and applaud her for her courage and pray for her safety, because she represents so much for America and the Muslim community. She has endured abuse in the face of confronting bigotry, Islamophobia, and the injustice that's around us and around the world. And also I would like to thank Representative Shkowski for her leadership to lend a voice and support for the creation of this very important office. And our dear brother Andre Carson, the Dean of Muslim Congress people, more to come. And Representative Jacob for lending a voice and support for this very important initiative. Ladies and gentlemen, the organization that I represent, the Council on American Islamic Relations, is the largest Muslim civil rights and liberty organization. We have been monitoring and combating anti-Muslim bias incidents and Islamophobia for the past 27 years. But in the past few months, we have seen an uptick in the number of cases against the Muslim community. Attacks on mosques, attacks on Muslim students in schools, more cases of discrimination in the workplace. There are many, many cases to enumerate and to talk about. I refer you to see the report that we are issuing today, the mid-year report of the incidents of 2021 on our website, www.cair.com. Some of these attacks are also including mosques, arson attacks on mosques, similar to that we have seen attacks on churches and synagogues by the same bigoted individuals, but different targets. Same source of bigotry, the same kind of attackers, but we have different targets. We are united in their bigotry, and we have to be united in our response and rejecting these attackers against our faith communities and against our racial communities. In the past few months, we have seen an uptick in those numbers. More than 500 cases our national office, which is just a few blocks away, received. In the past year, 2020, we have seen a 9% increase in the cases. We recorded about 6,000 anti-Muslim bias incidents. In the past 3 years, we have recorded 10,000 cases. These are almost astronomical numbers compared to the numbers that we have to research and document in the previous years before the Trump administration. Ladies and gentlemen, Islamophobia should not be normal. I can tell you that many Muslims around this country and around the world, those who live as minorities, they started to feel that Islamophobia is part of the normal life. It should not, and we should not accept it. Islamophobia is a danger and threat not only to Muslims, but to all our societies and to the peace of our communities. And that's why the creation of this important office at the State Department sends a clear message that it is not okay to be Islamophobic. It is not okay to discriminate against people because of their faith tradition. It is not okay again to discriminate against people because of their ethnicities. And the United States elected officials and the State Department sends clear and loud message that this will not be tolerated unless we see an end to bigotry at home and abroad. I would like to conclude by saying we have been calling for the creation of this office for the past 20 years. We asked for the Bush administration to do it. I'm so glad and hopeful that this might happen under the leadership of Joe Biden and with the effort and support of members of Congress like the ones that we have here. Thank you so much.
Thank you to Brother Nihad for those remarks on Capitol Hill. So this is the work that's happening, inshallah. The struggle continues. Again, it's multifaceted. The Special Envoy is just one part of the struggle against global anti-Muslim bigotry. This also includes being proactive, educating the people about Islam. It means trying to unite Muslims around justice and self-defense. It means putting pressure on corporations to stop enabling anti-Muslim bigotry, especially in places like China. It means calling out Western governments, especially France, that are utterly hypocritical. They claim to be beacons of freedom of religion. At the same time, they are attacking people of religion. So multifaceted advocacy, activism, protesting, economic boycotts, and yes, government pressure via a special envoy. So inshallah, we hope this will help. And we hope that we will at one point not need this envoy in the future, inshallah. The whole idea is to eventually put the special envoy out of business, right? So you don't need to have someone dedicated to countering anti-Muslim bigotry, because in an ideal world, it becomes a nuisance, not a mortal threat. We are not there at all yet. May Allah guide us to get there, and may Allah protect us all in the meantime. Huzaifa, thank you so much for your excellent work on this. Thank you to everyone who's worked on this project. And inshallah, we'll keep the community updated and posted. You can go to CAIR.com to read the report. I'll also ask our producer to put it in the comments so you all can download it, inshallah. And you can watch the full video of the press conference by going to CAIR.com or going to our YouTube page. Thank you all so much for joining. We hope you have a great day, and we hope you had a blessed Eid. May Allah accept your worship, and may Allah allow us all to be enjoying Hajj one day soon, inshallah, safely and securely. Assalamu alaikum. May peace be upon you.